Hey, what's up, everybody? Mike Fernandez with Arpent Realty. Welcome to part 4 of the 5-part series on getting started in real estate, where we're breaking down the 4 problems every real estate investor has to get good at solving. Right? So this is part 4, but we are talking about problem number 3 today. So first video was just an overview talking about all the pieces, how they fit together. Number 1 was how do we find deals? Where do we find them? Where are they? Number 2 was buy the deal, basically financing, all the different types of financing. And then number 3, today, what we're going to talk about is funding the deal, meaning cash. I'm sure in the last video, one of the big misconceptions that I wanted to dispel was you need 20% down to get into real estate, right? I think that's one of the biggest lies that people have in their head about real estate investing. Today, the biggest myth that I'm going to misspell is the exact opposite, coincidentally, right? The exact opposite, because you hear all these gurus and all these Instagram people and TikTokers and all this stuff say, you don't need money to invest in real estate, right? And technically, that statement is not a lie, right? However, it is very difficult to do, especially for a newbie, right? Because the whole thing with real estate is what are you bringing to the table? And technically, yes, you can get in and you can start investing with no money, no cash out of pocket, but you have to bring something else. There has to be something else on the other end of that seesaw, right? If you're not bringing any money, then you need experience, connections, resources, deals. You need something else to bring to balance that seesaw out. If you're going to have nothing on both sides, then it's not going to work, right? So technically, that statement is true. Practically, it makes things enormously more difficult without money. So that's what we're talking about today. Where does the money come from? How much do you need? What are some different options if you don't have it just sitting around in cash? So that's what we're talking about today. So the number one source on where you can find that cash. So again, let me circle back. We talked about a bunch of different financing types, right? Some of them were 20% down, right? $200,000 house, you need $60,000, right? Which is a lot of money. Look, if you can persevere through and just do the hard, boring work of spending less than you make, saving up a bunch of money, and putting 20% down, do it, right? That is the lowest risk you're going to get in real estate investing, right? That's the lowest. As soon as you start doing HELOCs and bringing in partners and doing creative stuff, every one of those, you click the risk meter up a little bit, right? Now, there are ways to minimize that risk, right? Being experienced, the numbers, due diligence, all those things. But the more cash you have in a deal, it's going to de-risk and it's going to lower your return a little bit, right? So, but again, as a newbie, I think this is very, very important to understand that is probably optimal, right? For your first deal to have a buffer. So if you buy at the top of the market, and nobody knows when they're buying at the top of the market, if things go south a little bit, you have the reserves, you have the equity that the house of cards isn't going to fall down. So path number 1 is just doing the long, slow, boring work that nobody wants to do to save up the money and put a good chunk of money down, right? Number 2, or another strategy, so to speak, we're going to talk about is equity that you have elsewhere. So whether that is in your personal home or in another investment type or another real estate investment, there are ways to tap into that stored equity and use it to buy a rental property. One of the more common ways we hear about is a cash out refinance. If you inherited a property and you own it free and clear, but family won't let you sell and you don't want to sell, you can do a cash out refinance, basically taking a mortgage on that loan up to 80%. If it's something you live in, you could potentially go higher. I would caution against going much higher than that. But you can get that cash, and now you have it in hand. That is a non-taxable event. So if you have a $100,000 property and you do a cash out refi, take $80,000 out, you don't have to pay taxes on that $80,000 you take out. You can turn around and redeploy that into new investments. Again, every single one of these is going to have a downside, right? Every single one. If you have the cash sitting in the bank account, the downside there is it's a low ROI play, right? If you're taking money out of something, you need to be aware that now you have something with no mortgage or a low mortgage, and that monthly note is going to shoot up. So you need to make sure what you're investing in over here is at least enough to balance out that monthly note. It has to make sense. If you're borrowing on a cash out or a line of credit and your monthly note because of that goes up $1,000 a month, but you buy this investment property over here and it's only making you 500 a month, doesn't make any sense, right? So it has to make sense, but you can go and do a cash out refinance. You can also do a HELOC, right? There are different types of HELOCs. HELOC is home equity line of credit, right? Typically people do these on their primary residence, but you don't have to. There's different types. Some of them are fixed, more like a cash out refinance, where you have a couple of years where you could draw and then it converts into a 15-year, or I think maybe even a 30-year second mortgage or first position mortgage. There's a different type of HELOC, and this is one that I have, where the bank gives you a certain amount, right? And it basically just kind of acts as this revolving debt. So if you had, let's just make up a number, 50 grand, right? If I haven't touched it, I'm not paying any interest on it, right? As soon as I take 10,000, 25, all 50, however much I take out, as soon as I take it out, now the clock starts ticking, and now I start having to pay interest on however much I took out, right? So that's helpful if you're doing something like flipping or wholesaling or a BRRRR or something like that, where there's a clear exit strategy. But I don't think that that is going to work if you're taking out from this HELOC, this revolving line, and using it as a down payment. There's no exit strategy, right? Or no short-term exit strategy for that long-term investment, right? You're probably not looking at selling that or refinancing that for years in the future, but at some point that revolving HELOC is going to come due, and the bank's going to say, okay, it's time to pay up, right? And you're going to need to access that money. So again, your strategy is going to determine how much cash you need and where you're going to get that cash, okay? So that's another way. Again, if you have stored equity somewhere, there are even ways where you can tap into a 401k. Look, I am admittedly not the expert here, but there's a thing called a self-directed 401k. And I should have put this disclaimer in the very beginning of all these videos, but I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not your financial advisor. I'm not a tax expert. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA. I'm not any of those things. I'm just a dude on YouTube that has done some real estate stuff. So full disclaimer, this is not financial advice or anything like that, okay? But there is a thing that is a self-directed IRA, meaning you can take control of your 401k or retirement savings and use that to invest in real estate. There's a lot of nuance, a lot of red tape, a lot of complication. So make sure you do your due diligence, but that does exist. If you have this big chunk, this big nest egg sitting away in a retirement account, and you would rather put that in real estate, there are ways to do it without having to pay all the fees, the fees and penalties that you would normally have to pay. So that's an option as well. Moving on, the other one that I see a lot of people get into is partners. So you can partner up on this, right? But again, it has to make sense. So if you said, and I've done this in the past, right? Hey, look, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to come and I've got the deal. I've got the long-term financing. I've got the management. I've got I've got the contractors baked in. All I need is the money. We can partner up on it and then turn around, refinance. We're BRRRR basically, right? Turn around, refinance it in 4 or 6 months, and it's going to be a long-term rental, right? So I have all the other pieces of the puzzle except for this one, the cash, right? That's a way where it makes sense. But if somebody comes up to me and says, hey, Mike, let's partner up on a real estate deal. I'm like, okay, great. What's the deal? Oh, well, I don't have one yet. I was hoping you could find one. Okay, sure, I can find a deal. Do you have the cash? Well, no, I don't have cash either. That's why I wanted to partner with you. Okay, well, what about, are you going to do all the work to save us money? Well, no, I don't know how to do any construction work. Are you going to manage it or oversee it? Or, well, no, I just want to partner up with you. There's no benefit, right? There's no advantage. There's no reason for someone to partner up in that situation. So I would say you have to have at least half the pieces of the puzzle together, which is hard for a newbie without experience, right? Bringing the deal is a great way to find partners because you are bringing the key piece of the puzzle. We talked about that in the first video, right? In the second video, where to me, the finding the deal is the most important piece of this entire thing. Without that piece of the puzzle, none of the other stuff matters, right? So if you can get really good at finding deals, then you can find partners, right? Hey, I'm bringing the deal. Let's go find the money. You're going to manage it, or you're going to bring the money, and then we're going to manage it, whatever. But you need to bring something, right? I had another thought there or let's say you are a contractor by trade and want to get into real estate, and you come to me and say, hey, Mike, I want to partner up. Let's find a deal. We can find the money, but I'm going to do all the work, right? I'm going to do it at cost. I'm going to completely renovate this house. I'm going to spend my time and energy. The piece of the puzzle that I'm bringing is my resources, as my experience as a contractor, that I can do great work, and I'm doing it at cost, basically for free, right? So there's a piece of the puzzle. There's something that you're bringing. So if you're going the partner route, figure out what it is you bring to the table. What pieces of the puzzle are you bringing? And you probably want to bring more value than you are taking. Perfect example, right? Let's say I go to somebody, hey, let's partner up. I don't have any experience. I don't have any money, anything, but I'm a real estate agent and I can list the house for you and I won't even take a commission. So do you think somebody's going to go and do a 50-50 split, or even if it was an 80-20 split, and give up 20 grand worth of profit to save $5,000-$6,000 in real estate commission? Absolutely not, right? So the value you bring has to be greater than the paycheck that you get. That's the key thing with partnerships, right? The other last piece on partnerships that's somewhat related, but it came up in that newbie panel. Me and Dylan talked about this, where be very particular about who you partner with in a couple of different ways, right? One, integrity's got to be the number one thing. I don't care how many deals this person's done, how much cash they've done. If I can't trust them, if I don't think that they have similar values and don't have integrity, I will not touch them with a 10-foot pole, right? And I truly believe how you do one thing is how you do all things. Even if they've been honest and ethical with you, but they've got a long list of bodies, bloody bodies behind the road, figuratively, of people that they've ripped off, right? Hey, look, just be cautious, right? So integrity is number one, shared values, that's number one. But number two, I see a lot of people get into partnerships and they say, hey, you and I think a lot alike, right? So let's go and we'll be partners together on this real estate thing. We both have the same skills. We're both good at Excel spreadsheets, and neither of us have ever lifted a hammer. That's a terrible partnership. You want to find somebody on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? You want to find somebody who has different skills, different perspectives. That's a good partnership, where you say, hey, you're really good at the numbers and you have MLS access. You can analyze the deals and find the deals. And I am really good with my hands and I can go put in the work. And I have a ton of contractor buddies who I can get great prices from, and we can leverage that, right? Like, that is the partnership you want, not two of the exact same puzzle piece, right? So just a couple last minute notes there before we move on. Let's see. Private money, again, that's kind of same as the line of credit, right? You can get a private lender and you can say, hey, I'm getting a bank loan on this, 80%, I need 20%. You can borrow 20% from a private lender. But again, as a newbie, you're talking very risky, right? Now you are leveraging 100% of that cost. That's risky for you, the bank, and the lender. If you don't really know what you're doing, or the numbers aren't really solid, you're putting everybody in risk, right? So it is possible. We've done it in the past, right, where we've gotten a loan and stacked on top private money so that we could leverage and do more than we ordinarily would be able to do. But you just have to be aware of the risk involved. And then the last one that I'll talk about is like creative, right? Like, there are ways where you can get the seller to contribute those funds, right? Whether it's a carryback or creative financing, all those different things. I'll do the same disclosure here that I did in the last video when the creative finance stuff came up. I am not the expert. Reach out to an expert, do some research, get in touch with somebody like Courtney Fricky, who is an expert. She's awesome, right? But the key point here is, when people look at an offer or buying a house, most people focus on the sales price. That's only one of a ton of different terms that are involved with buying, right? We can flex all those other terms to make them more favorable. So if a seller wants, a certain price, say, hey, I can give you that price if you are willing to pull these levers on these other terms, right? And maybe that is a seller second. Instead of you getting all your money up front, maybe you take a portion of it and I'm going to pay you monthly over the next however many years, right? So there are ways that you can do some creative stuff to get the seller basically to fund the deal for you. Again, you want to be cautious. You want to do your research, right? I would say that is more like blue belt to black belt territory. So just be cautious as you step into that arena. It is a little bit more sophisticated, right? So buyer beware. But it is a great strategy. I know people who have tons of success with it and do really well. In my experience, there are also a lot of influencers and charlatans in that world, right? Again, stick with people who are actually doing it. Just follow Courtney. She'll even point you at probably a ton of other people in that world that are legit players. And then the last one, I know I said the last one was the last, but I'll use this one as the last one, is the BRRRR, right? It kind of died off the last couple of years. You don't hear a whole lot of people talking about it. 2019 through 2022, it was the bell of the ball was the BRRRR strategy. And if you're not aware, it's buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. So basically what you're doing, it's typically a house that needs a little bit of work, right? But you are buying the house with private money or all cash or something like that, renovating it, getting a tenant in there, then going to the bank and saying, hey, I have this house. It's worth $200,000. I only owe $100,000 all in for it. I want you to give me 100 or 150 in a refinance, right? Now you've got all that cash back. You pay the investor out. You have the initial money you started with back in your hands to rinse and repeat and keep going, right? So the idea in a perfect world, the perfect BRRRR, you would never deplete that amount of money. If you started off with $50,000, right, you're dumping it into one project, you do the full BRRRR, you get the 50K back, maybe even more, right? And now you have the rental property and you've recovered the money you started with. So that's, in a perfect world, how the BRRRR would work. I will say the BRRRR is substantially more difficult to accomplish in today's world with insurance and high interest rates. Way harder to do. You used to be able to do BRRRRs fairly easily and get them the pencil positive. It's very, very difficult in today's world. It's still possible, right? You just need a really, really good deal. So if you're good and if you trust your numbers and if you're really good, that could be an opportunity where you take that private money, maybe a line of credit or cash out refi, and you're going to dump it into one BRRRR, get it out, and then you can kind of rinse and repeat, right? The risk is that if things don't go the way you plan, if the appraisal comes in low, if the rent comes in low, if the rehab goes over budget, there are a lot of things that could eat up at that chunk of money, whether it's your cash or a private investor HELOC. So you have to have backup plans. You have to be able to solve that problem if you get there. So again, maybe not blue black belt like the creative finance stuff, but I would put BRRRR in that, maybe, I don't know, the belt, yellow belt, whatever's before blue, right? It's not necessarily a white belt strategy, but it is definitely doable for the new investor. So there you have it. That is a bunch of different ways that you can fund those deals. And next, congratulations. If you followed this video and you did it as the videos come out, you now own a piece of real estate, right? You own a property. The next one is going to be just as important. It's going to be operating the deal. So now that you have a real estate deal, how do you operate it? How do you actually make it make you money instead of losing you money, which is more common than you might think? So stay tuned. That one's coming out soon.